Basin Groundwater Management Agency to order at 3:01 on March 30th, 2023. Want to call the roll, Roberta?
Director Daddy,
Present.
Director Finch, Director Andrews, Whitman,
Here.
Director Peter, Arthielke, Chair Hages.
Here.
Thank you.
Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next item is director announcements. Peter's not here, so we don't do the mutuals. Jim?
No meeting. Emily and I met with Supervisor Levere at the Grand Avenue Bridge and brought he and his staff up to speed on the spreading grounds and High Water Conservation District's issues with LAFCO. And on the spreading grounds specifically, we looked at the weir and how the measuring devices been destroyed, and he thought that the spreading grounds worked great, and we gave him a different interpretation.
City of Ojai?
Nothing to report. Oh, I'm
Bob?
sorry. Community Facility District, nothing to report.
Okay, for Casitas, we're at 67% and still climbing at Casitas Reservoir. We're gaining well over 1,000 acre-feet a day, so we just keep these little storms coming in, it'll be much higher at the end of the year. Just in time.
There's one here.
Do you have anything to report, Peter, on Senior Canyon Mutual Water Company?
Well, just that we've, whoa. What's happening? We were hit really hard by the rains, and in the middle of working with FEMA, and just came from a meeting that's really haven't been fooling around. And so that's in process, but along with the, we have our tunnel grant going, so, no rest for the wicked. That's about it, though. Haven't heard anything from here, Hermitage or Siete Robles.
All right.
How's the level in your little reservoir there? Is that,
Oh, the reservoir's been full for a long time, but that's just 75 acre feet.
oh,
That's a drop in the bucket. But it's extremely beautiful and the birds love it.
Yeah. Okay, general manager comments.
I don't have anything tonight.
Okay. Jordan, you have basin status report?
I do. Let me share my screen here. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, so the title of today's presentation is the 99th percentile. Again, Ojai Basin conditions during this record wet winter. Of course, we call it the 99th percentile, similar to, when you scored almost all right on a standardized test in elementary school. They didn't give you 100%, they gave you the 99 percentile. And that's sort of where we are, just on the threshold of just absolutely full with nowhere but Lake Casitas to put the water. Part of that, of course, has to do with the big rains, of course. The big numbers are that 70.35 inches on Nordoff Ridge.
Wow.
Pretty amazing up there. Down the valley floor, it's about 40 inches, although we've got this 17.18 and 30.32. That 40.06 on the valley floor to date it's pretty amazing. When normal to date is 18.85 inches. That's 212% of normal. This time last year, we were at 14.68 inches. And it wasn't a bad year last year. So how has this basin responded? Obviously, we had surface water flow that continued from late December through late January, and then went away for a little bit of time, most of February. And then once the February 24 storms, it's been flowing ever since as surface water completely across the basin, at least along San Antonio Creek. Now we are, of course, as I mentioned, nearing full capacity, and that's really how the basin responds to these kind of storms and wet years. The hydrograph's looking about as beautiful as it could. As of Monday's measurement, we're less than 50 feet deep to water in the Key Well. And that's somewhere around 97% capacity. It's still rising, 77,600 acre feet based on an 80,000 acre foot storage capacity of the basin. But of course, when you're that full and you've come up this much, this fast, it begs the question is how full can we get? 1978, we had a peak measurement of 38.2 feet in the 5L8 well. That's the county Key Well, the one we used prior to putting in the data logger at Elrod Well. And we typically see about 17 feet shallower water levels in the Elrod Well by comparison to that 5L8 well. We're about 13 feet lower elevation and 600 feet west of the 5L8 well in the Elrod well. Now, why do we use the different one? We kind of explained this in our comments here. We'll get to this later in this meeting. But at the Elrod well, it's only used by one party as opposed to a handful of different folks. It tends to pump as main ag well relatively infrequently, as opposed to that 5L8 well. Now, that would give us a prediction of about a 21.2 foot depth to water in the Elrod well when all is said and done for the input side of this water year. But we could reach 100% full sooner than that. And that is, how full can we get? Well, full is full when all of the recharge is rejected and we reach the top of the S curve. Remember this from high school economics, and when you just couldn't have any more carrying capacity from any kind of system that has a limited capacity. And the Ojai Basin does have a limited capacity. We can fill this up. We can fill it up to where it will reject recharge, and the inflow equals the outflow, and that's it. And it just holds it stayed in storage. Now, you can imagine that part of that is when how full is full? Do wells flow artesian? Well, yes, but they also will flow artesian prior to us getting to 100% full. Now, anticipating this, we added a couple of data loggers to the Lago Marcino well, which incidentally is now flowing artesian as well. The Topa Topa Ranch Well 5, the hydrograph shown here, just from March 8th to the 23rd. This is pretty high frequency stuff, but just focused on this past month, where you see just a continuous rise in the water level, really responding to each of the main precipitation events that we had during this month. And what that tells us is we're at 47 feet deep to water in this particular well on the far east end of the basin, and it's still got room to grow. It still has a little bit of capacity. But at the same time, as we predicted about a month ago, returning soon after 12 years, artesian conditions, and remember we showed you this graphic where that well at the Theodore Woolsey house was starting to leak the artesian pressure. Well, fast forward a couple of weeks and it's doing this. And that's a pretty sight to see. Hopefully you can see it in this little graphic where that vent tube is just a fountain on both sides. And that's flowing out about 10 to 15 gallons per minute, just under artesian pressure. Now, where are these artesian wells? Each of these little spring fountain marks, almost look like little fireworks, are where some of these wells that we've observed in the past month. And upwards, that furthest north one is the Lago Marcino well. Now, what this tells us is, of course, that there's a pretty hefty confining condition at depth. There's the condition of the hydrology with significant input and shallow water levels coming into play that are creating this. And then, of course, the clay stratum that approximates the southwest uppermost saturated zone or perched aquifer to the south and west. And it also confines these deeper systems. As we observe this phenomenon of artesian wells grow this month in particular, it's coming April especially, and potentially into May, we'll see a really good map of where each of these wells are. And I expect that the density and breadth, geographic area of those firework springs to the fountains of the wells that are artesian to grow. And that will help us define that limit of the perched system. And that's an important concept in this basin for management. Now, that photograph is pretty good, but I like to see this in video. Can you all see that video flowing?
Yes.
Okay, good. That's that well flowing artesian. And then over here at the Hartman Tree Farm well, that's what it looks like there. And that's a good amount of water flowing out right there. And in fact, it's flowing out right onto the ground surface and going down that stream at some 25, 30 gallons per minute at least, potentially more. And if I look at it from Ojai Avenue, you can see a significant amount of that water flowing out down the pipe and down the creek, just to the south side of Ojai Avenue. And that of course flows directly into San Antonio Creek, just to the west of this well's location. That's at Boardman Road and Ojai Avenue. So it's been an exciting spring so far after an exciting winter. And we look forward to seeing these phenomena continue, and eventually they will recede. They will have water levels that decline to below the ground surface once again, and we'll of course monitor that. And that recession is significantly important. So thank you, and I look forward to participating in the rest of this meeting here.
Any member of the board have any questions or comments? Or any member of the public that have any questions or comments? All right, thank you, Jordan.
Of course, thank you.
Okay, the next item is public comments on items that do not appear on today's agenda. Do we have any public comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to item 7, action items. 7A is DUDAC GSP activities. John?
Yes, Trevor, I'd like to introduce you. Trevor Jones is here with DUDEC this evening. And I usually ask him each meeting to talk about what they've been doing over the last month since the last board meeting. So Trevor, you want to give us an update on what's going on?
Yeah, over the last month, we have been knee-deep in updating and finalizing the GSP annual report, which was included in the board packet. Aside from that, there have not been many GSP-related activities. So I think the most pertinent item that DUDEC's been working on is really associated with item 7B, the GSP.
Can you speak up a little bit? It's kind of garbled and the volume's low.
I'm sorry about that. Can you guys hear me now?
It could be us.
It might be on, I think it switched mid-Jordan.
James turned down.
Yeah.
Oh,
Should I try it again?
Yeah, hang for just a minute.
Yeah.
And there was enough information in here to make your eyes cross for a couple hours. where are we gonna get the $8 million to run this thing for the next 20 years?
Yeah, well, that's not on tonight's agenda.
I'm sorry. They put that way at the back. See, you have like 2 pages from the end, like you can't make it from here.
Yeah, we always leave the hardest problem
Try
to
it
last.
now, Trevor.
Can you guys hear me now?
No.
No, it's still. You have to speak up over the pickleball in the background.
Yeah.
Trying to get that moved behind the skate park.
Oh.
Because it's so noisy there. And there's no residents around there. That'd be the perfect place, but we'll see. We'll see if we have an operating school district here in a couple weeks anyway.
Well, try it.
How's it now?
Oh, it went
Worse.
It's worse.
Cool.
That's too bad. We could have been out of here at 3:30.
Yeah.
Set a record.
We can try and have Devin talk and see if that's a little bit clearer.
They're coming now. Hold on.
Okay.
Gonna try it now?
No, he's got to adjust the volume. There's too many dials in here. I can't figure out which.
Oh. The operator error.
It's called job security. He's the only guy that knows the dials.
Yeah. Say something, Trevor.
Can you guys hear me now?
There we go. All right.
Okay. Well, thank you for working that out. So over the last month, DUDEC has been knee deep in updating and finalizing the GSP annual report. We had the opportunity to meet with Julia as well to go over the annual report and connect with her. But predominantly the GSP related activities have been focused solely on the annual report, which Devin will provide an update on in the next action item. So that's it for this item, unless there are any questions.
Okay, any questions? We're gonna move on to the item B.
Yeah, I'll have a brief update on some annual report updates and revisions. Can you all see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, just gonna take a couple minutes here to provide a summary of what revisions we've made based on comments we've received from the board. So we've received a few comments, some at the last board meeting and some via email. And the comments have been on some figure revisions and also a few table and text revisions. So starting with the figure revisions and updates, at the last board meeting, it was pointed out that the cumulative departure from mean precipitation curve in the Ojai weather station precipitation graph shown here on the slide did not start and end at 0 and also did not dip below 0. So we reviewed the data for that graph and found that the issue was that several years that are considered to have an incomplete data record were excluded from the mean precipitation, the dashed black line, but were included in the cumulative departure from mean curve. So we've corrected this issue. And now the cumulative departure from mean precipitation curve ends at 0 and also dips below 0 during the 1960 dry period. And the curve doesn't start at 0 because that first water year, 1906 water year, was a dry water year with a total of 14 inches of precipitation, which is less than the mean. So that's why the curve starts below the 0 line there. moving on to some other figure updates. We added a geologic cross-section figure to the annual report to accompany the text that describes the aquifer and octards in the basin. And the figure we included is one similar to one that was in the GSP that's west to east transect across the basin. And then lastly, we added the Ojai water system service area boundary to the groundwater extractions figure in order to show the location of the water system and where groundwater and pumped for the system and surface water delivered to it is used. Moving on to the table and text revisions, there's a number of grammatical and formatting edits that have been made to the report, and also some clarifying language has been added where appropriate. So here we have the table that shows the representative monitoring points, groundwater elevations, and minimum thresholds. And in the table, there's the text TBD for to be determined under the minimum threshold for the Lego Marcino well and also for the South Central Depth Discrete Monitoring well. And so we've added an explanation in the text and also in the notes to the table, the reason for this being that there's not sufficient data at this time. And so these minimum thresholds will be developed in the future as part of the 5-year GSP update when sufficient data are available. Also, another clarification that has been added is that for the groundwater extraction table, which shows groundwater extractions for water year 2020, 2021, and then the most recent 2022 water year, added an explanation as to why the water year 2022 total extractions are about 1,000 acre-feet less than the previous year. And that explanation is that really at this time, the extraction reporting for water year 2022 is preliminary, and the OBGMA is currently working to update and improve the groundwater extraction metering program, and will revise the groundwater extraction volumes as additional data are received. And also water year 2022 was an average water year coming off a dry water year. So another reason likely for the decrease in pumping. So with that, that's the primary changes that were made to the annual report. The board has received the track changes copy of the report. So at this time, we're asking for request approval to finalize and submit the report to DWR by April 1st, which is Saturday.
Okay, thank you, Trevor. Any comments or questions from the board?
No, I was just gonna say, I would think every year it would just be preliminary on the previous year and it's always gonna be more data, and then you finalize it in the following year's report. Yeah. With that comment, I'd make a motion to accept accept and submit.
I second.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, call the roll.
Director Daddy,
Yes.
Director Finch,
Yes.
Director Whitman,
Yes.
Director Thielke,
Yes.
and Chair Hages.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trevor. Okay, the next item is the LAFCO Municipal Services Review. John?
Yeah, the board asked for this to come back, this meeting. We had a little bit of a discussion about it actually at the special meeting. And I had provided you a copy of what I had previously offered and a copy of the document that LAFCO had given me that's a draft. So I think the things I had outlined, I don't know if it showed up here. If you look at starting with item 11, I had said last meeting we'd come back and say things that are still outstanding to be submitted to LAFCO. And so if you look at my comments, be the page, I think it's page 3. Page 3, starting at item 11, those items highlighted are things that still need to be provided to LAFCO. And so not that I necessarily need any action, but if the board had any additional comments, and then there needs to be follow-up in these items to make sure that LAFCO gets this information.
Board have any comments or questions?
Get to 11.
Yeah, the one that the way it's stated, it's kind of misrepresents what's going on when it says the storage declines an average of 3,200 acre feet a year. That's not necessarily true. I mean, obviously not this year. So they have to understand that's not an ongoing decline in total storage.
That was LAFCO's comment, correct?
Yes.
How can seepage through a septic system go ahead and be involved in this?
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
So take into account the pumping, extraction, and seepage from septic and sewers.
There was a comment, I don't know exactly where it's at. What item was that?
That's number 11.
Oh, okay.
It's page 12 of their comments.
Yeah, there was a comment on their page 12. They kind of mischaracterized or really didn't understand what seepage was and where the water was coming from within the basin. Let me find that, see if I can find it.
I mean, we've had plenty of seepage through the sanitary system, the INI, but they've gone in and they've lined those pipes and they've cut that way down.
Well, I think they were talking about primarily septic. I mean, there's language in there that talks about return flows and, you know, septic systems are one. Sewers, I don't think were mentioned. Yeah, I just don't think they understand the,
Is it pertinent or can we just ignore it?
Well, I think that the GSP document addressed it, as I recall, Trevor, Devon, that I think you had estimated some return flows into the basin, which I think were irrigation, percolation, maybe sewers, septic tanks. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, I believe it does include irrigation and septic. I'm opening up the GSP right now to see if, I don't remember a discussion of leakage from sewers, but let me double check really quick while we're on the phone right now.
I mean, the reality is, you know, you can talk about trying to fix all the sewers you want, but they're going to leak to some degree.
I just don't even see where some of this stuff gets it. It's not even LAFCO's purview. I don't get some of it.
yeah, I don't understand it either. I think they're trying to develop.
Do everything.
Yeah. Define who we are.
I mean, like the grand jury of water? We'll just
Because
do it all.
even if all the sewers themselves were 100% repaired by the sanitation district, you still have laterals from the properties and, you know, things are gonna happen. They get roots, they separate, you know, there's gonna be leakage, but trying to quantify all that is
In the scheme of things, it's
difficult.
nothing.
Yeah, it's a small amount.
On the audits, have we gotten any news on whether we have a bite?
I haven't heard anything.
I talked to Julia about it, and she was gonna talk to Casitas's finance officer and see if they know of any auditors that are willing to do something like this.
Well, there needs to be a follow-up with the current auditor, and I'm not sure what the issue is, but
Yeah,
I asked Roberta to have the bookkeeper try and get a hold of them and find out what's lacking.
do we have a contract with them?
We did, but it's probably been 2 years since it was let originally.
I think we might be better off just going with someone else.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if we even paid anything on that contract. I don't recall.
I don't think we paid we paid for the first audit, and I don't think we paid anything since.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the LAFCO report? Any comments by the public? Okay, hearing none, we move to item D. Item D is, I'm going to withdraw that. Ojai Land Conservancy was unable to submit the grant. They're going to try again at another time. Okay, item E is the appointment of interim general manager. So I had discussions with Casitas to see if they were willing to help us out since John's leaving tomorrow or the next day. To help us out with, have someone perform the duties of general manager for the OBGMA, at least in the interim until we can decide what we want to do on a permanent basis. And the fact, I appreciate the fact that both the Casitas board, Mike Flood and Julia, agreed that they would do this. So there's a memo in the packet that talks about the terms and conditions, but it's basically, the board has agreed to provide Julia as general manager to provide us with those services for an interim period of 6 months until all parties can determine where we want to go from there. We will reimburse Casitas at a flat rate of $1,700 a month for her services. And John has agreed to make himself available as much as possible to help Julia out. So I haven't known Julia for very long, but a year and a half, well, I've probably known her for longer than that before I was elected to the board, but she does an outstanding job at Casitas. She's the one that manages the Ojai system renovation, which was no easy task. You're almost done. At least you're almost out of money. Yeah. So she's the manager of Casitas' engineering department, and I think she will make sure that we keep on moving with some very important issues that we have to do, even through the just next few months. So
I would just like to offer, I've worked with Julia over the years. We both worked at the same organization for several years together. And I think she's a really good fit for this, quite frankly, and she'll do good work, very detailed, and probably gonna do a lot better job than I have done.
any comments or questions from the board?
Yeah, I have maybe a comment, I guess. And I've heard nothing but good things. But I know that there's, potential for Julia wearing two hats and them not always fitting. And as attorneys, we get in that situation at times too. And, typically we have language that allows us to resolve conflicts with our clients. And so I was thinking maybe we should have legal counsel look at a way for Julia to easily resolve something where she finds herself, oh, I've got this loyalty to Casitas, I've got this loyalty to the board as just a mechanism to notify folks so that it doesn't turn into a situation where, somebody from the public is concerned that that happened. But it seems like something that we could take care of with, some language in her agreement or in the relationship. And I bring that up because I was taught that, you enter into agreements, it's not for when everybody's happy, it's really for when people get upset. So I don't want Julia to be put in a position where somebody could be upset.
I appreciate that, and that's a valid concern, and that was one that I brought up to Mr. Flood early on when we started talking about it. So I want to make sure that my roles stay separate, and I look horrible in hats, so I won't be wearing any, but I want to make sure that I serve both agencies appropriately and don't cross any boundaries between them.
And I think part of the task over the next 6 months, within the next 6 months, is for Casitas's attorney and our attorney to come up with an agreement that works for both sides.
Right.
So, you know, it can happen. Julia said she didn't want, one of the reasons she didn't want to do this is because she's not political. That was a plus.
I liked having that buffer between me and the board, but I'm ready, so.
Okay,
Right.
thank you, Julia. Any other comments?
I'd like to add, you don't have an agreement in your package, so there needs to be one drafted, and certainly Director Whitman's comments are valid, and I've run into that too with attorneys in the past, and so I would suggest that, you know, whatever discussion you want to have is fine, but approve the appointment on an interim basis, but subject to a final agreement. That's what I'd suggest.
Yes, and that was the intent. We couldn't come up with one by tomorrow, so.
Yeah.
Excuse me, board members, so I have a question then. I mean, were we talking about, a 6-month interim period where there would not be a formal agreement in place? Or are we talking about getting an agreement in place with appropriate conflict of interest disclosures and pathway to resolving conflicts, prior to the 6-month period?
Yeah, I think we can, I think my understanding was Casitas is willing to do it on a relatively informal basis for the limited period of 6 months. But I don't think they'd be opposed to an agreement if you and their legal counsel would like to draft something up.
The other
Okay,
thing-
so if I understand, then the direction is to start working on something sooner rather than later to deal with any issues of conflicts that could arise during the interim period and on a go-forward basis.
Yes.
That makes sense? Okay, good. Thank you.
And if anything comes up in the meantime, I will certainly bring it to both attorneys' attention to get their feedback on it
Okay.
for direction.
Peter, I have, for the board's pleasure, I have an agreement with the agency. It may need to be modified, but at least it's a start. And so maybe I can forward that to Peter, and at least gives you something to start with, and you can adjust it as necessary. Does that work?
Sounds good to me, John. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. I'll make sure that happens.
Yeah, I think I made it clear in the memorandum, but I want to make it clear that Julia will remain a full-time employee of Casitas Water District, not of the OBGMA. She will just providing contract services from Casitas to the OBGMA. You want to repeat your recommended motion? Pardon me? You have a comment?
Motion is the board approve the appointment of Julia Aranda as interim general manager, subject to a final agreement.
I so move.
Second?
Call the roll?
Director Daddy,
Yes.
Director Finch,
Yes.
Director Whitman,
Yes?
Director Thielke,
Yes.
and Chair Hages.
Yes.
Unanimous, thank you.
Okay, discussion item, GSP time schedule.
I had mentioned at the last meeting that, I think over the last several months, and certainly with all the GSP and with the annual reports and everything, some questions about what the agency is responsible for. Why am I getting 2 pages? The agency is responsible for submitting to the state of California, related to groundwater sustainability plan. There's a couple things that I pulled out. The first document, it's the last 3 pages in your agenda. The first document was a page out of the executive summary of the groundwater sustainability plan, and I highlighted just a few things, that the deadline to adopt the GSP was January 31st last year, 2022. Is responsible for implementing GSP or over Sigma planning and implementation horizon of 50 years. There's annual reports that have to be submitted by April 1st of each year. And then there's more detailed 5-year evaluations will have to be done by April 1st of 2027, 2032, 2037, and 2042. And I believe, Trevor, at the 2042, it's supposed to, essentially, it's not just a 5-year update, but it's kind of a major revision. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the what they call the implementation horizon. So there's 20 years to kind of maintain sustainability, and within that, after that 20-year mark, there should be good working understanding of the basin, what leads to sustainability, and what's going to promote that in the long term. So John, you're correct that 20-year one would be a little bit of a larger effort.
And then the last 2 pages were just the time schedule originally published by the Department of Water Resources that gave dates in years of when certain things had to be completed through the groundwater sustainability plan process. So it's just information for the board.
Right? Any comments or?
Question, John, things move so quickly. Do we have any more emergency issues, regulations, things that we need to do that the governor continues to throw at us because we're gonna have people wanting permits and life is gonna go on? And so where are we with this emergency
Well,
stuff?
the only thing that I'm aware of is the governor's executive order, and then updated that executive order just recently related to the permitting of wells within a groundwater basin that's essentially, I don't want to say rated, but it's classified as a, I can't even remember the classifications, but it's a basin that's, fits in the high categories of being overdrafted.
Yeah.
And
High.
so,
Yeah.
the Ojai
Medium,
Basin.
high priority, sorry.
High priority, yeah. So
Yeah.
the basin was classified by the state as a high priority basin. And so the governor's executive orders, in addition to all the work that's been done over the last couple of years related to the GSP, is all in response to the high priority basin. Pretty much the executive order, just to boil down really simple, it says you can issue wells for domestic use, and as long as it, in fact, OBGMA is not issuing the permit, it's the county of Ventura, but OBGMA needs to determine if the well is consistent with its groundwater sustainability planning process. If the well is less than 2 acre feet and it's going to be used for domestic purposes, it's exempt from the governor's executive order. Anything that's not listed as domestic use and over 2 acre feet or more, is going to have to go through permitting by the county of Ventura as far as determining if the well will impact any adjacent wells in the area. And then the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, which is OBGMA, has to provide a report. It doesn't really say a report, but we did this once already. Provides a report that says that the use of the well is consistent with the groundwater sustainability plan within the basin.
Okay, follow-up question. There was an irrigating fields. Where is that? Is that domestic use, not domestic use? And where does that, I mean, I'm giving everybody the answer, don't say that, say it's domestic use, but when they say it's field irrigation, where's that thing gonna be?
Well, typically irrigation is irrigation, it's not domestic use. So domestic use is usually water for your use in the home, and then incidental irrigation around the house. But it's not generally for crop irrigation.
And then the 2 acre feet does not have any effect on that?
No, it's gotta be domestic use and less than 2 acre feet.
And I think, I recognize Bill Lindsay in the audience. I think he is representing the applicant that you're talking about?
I do, and I've got thank you. Sorry, I'm late for public comment, but that is correct, and I do have a copy of the governor's order, if you guys would like to see, which gives the exemption under the 2 acre feet, which is 1.9, and it does allow for gardens, single establishments, ornamental shrubbery,
Yeah.
domestic stock for family, incidental, and just pure enjoyment of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I would
relates
agree
to
with
it.
that, yeah.
So, and again, we had submitted and modified our original one to meet this request. So we just asked that next meeting that look to be approved under the governor's order for that exemption. Thank you.
You answered my question. And so we'll have their application come before us next meeting?
Not at this meeting.
No,
No,
not at
next.
this meeting,
Next, yes.
next.
We actually
Next
have
meeting.
submitted it, it was emailed and submitted, excuse me here. It was submitted on March 28th, excuse me, on March 10th. So we submitted this on March 10th. Wade Lewis is our in-house engineer, had submitted it to Roberta, and we received confirmation it was submitted on March 10th. We understand with everything the board's got going on, it just by accident didn't make it on this agenda. And I understand things happen, but would ask if we can get it back on the next agenda meeting.
Yes, we
Is-
will.
Who's the owner? Is this Mertz?
It is.
Okay,
It is.
okay.
I think, John, it's been one that we've talked for
Kicked
quite some
around.
time on, and
Yeah.
so if it just, again, we've all been patient, and, you know, we haven't been able to get in with the rain, so it has all worked out, but would appreciate the board taking a look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Is there anything else, Bob, on that?
No, I just wanted to.
Yeah. The only other thing we have to watch out for is our GSP has not been approved by the state, so we don't know what's gonna come or when it's going to come, so. But other than
They
that,
did a good job. It'll be approved.
oh, yes, you bet, yeah. No, they did. I think it will.
In the rate,
Do you have a batting average? Do you have a batting average yet?
We're doing pretty good so far. Of the ones that have been reviewed, 3 accepted or approved, so. out of the
Three have been accepted?
Yes. that's
Okay,
correct.
good.
Yeah, that's good.
and
'Cause it's
DWR,
opening day.
DWR has up to 2 years
No, I
to
saw.
do this. And so we're only a little over a year into,
Yeah.
since the submittal.
Okay. The only thing I'd like to say, I'd just like to thank John very much for his services to the OBGMA. I don't think we would have been able to get through the onslaught of changes and regulations if it weren't for him. So I hope we continue to hear from you, and I hope you enjoy your trip to the UK.
Looking forward to it. It's amazing how much effort you have to put into getting ready for those trips nowadays.
Yeah, I imagine.
And especially with my wife, because we have to take a scooter, and then that's got to be approved by the airline, and TSA stuff. It's just amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else, we're adjourned at 3:50.